number one, great. As soon as we got onto number two, like, I'm really struggling to stay awake, and I'm getting a lot of spirit influence now that we're starting to talk about truth, because I feel like that's what spirits in particular don't want us to connect with. Yeah.
This is the problem we have in the world today, is all of us think we want love, and we'll talk about love, and we're open to a discussion about love, fairly well open emotionally. But as soon as I begin speaking of truth, which is the doorway into love, everyone closes the door. Can you feel your own feelings?
That's what I'm wanting to do.
Closing the door to this basic understanding of divine truth. And yet what I'm saying to you is, without divine truth, without God's truth, you have no hope to have your soul ever transformed. And yet, as soon as we start talking about truth even, there's a contraction of our very soul. And we've got to look at why. Can you see? We've got to look at why we are so resistive to hearing the truth all the time. Why is it such a burden for you to hear the truth? Would you like to express why it's such a burden? Deb, thanks, if we're going
to... For me, maybe possibly for others, the only time I heard truth as a child was twice from my father, and twice that I recall, might have been more. I was so totally condemned.
Okay, so usually a parent has condemned.
Like I was in a box that I could never get out of this box. I was just bad.
Or judged you.
Yeah.
So the problem is, oftentimes when I start talking about truth, there's this automatic feeling inside of you that you're going to be judged, or you are being judged as bad, useless, pointless. That is a basic reason why we are resistive to being open to truth. If we go to... Is it Monique up there? Yes. Oh, sorry, Renee. Sorry, Renee.
I just feel really hopeless and really powerless, as though I can't change, and just end up giving up.
So we have a belief that I cannot change. And by the way, that is a true belief while you resist God's love. Does that make sense? That's why we have a tendency then to feel it, of course. If we go to Alex.
There is a fear of seeing the level of unlovingness within me.
So third thing, we don't want to see our true condition. Or let's put it this way, a feeling that I cannot face my true condition.
I feel like especially still going through a lot of fear after the sleep state talk.
Yep.
To see the truth of what's happening there for me.
Yes. Yep. Real struggle to feel our true condition.
Yeah.
So the trouble is, when we struggle to feel our true condition, we bury our head in the sand, right? Because in denial, because we don't want to actually see or feel our true condition. Does that make sense? Monique? It's just up the back there.
When I see the truth about myself, sometimes I feel so overwhelmed that it's so big that I feel powerless to change anything.
Okay, so there's two issues there really, but let's look at the first one. I feel overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed by the badness. I guess I judge it as well.
Right, see, I wouldn't call it the badness, I'd just call it the emotion within. You know, understand? I feel overwhelmed. we want to talk more about these feelings in a minute because we're going to focus on some of these feelings in the humility section of the talk. But can you see how some feelings are preventing us from even allowing the truth to open the door to love? We're not even getting to the point where we're opening the door to love because we're rigidly holding onto the door, which is truth, not wanting it to open because we're afraid of what we're going to have to feel if it opens. So we don't open it. Right? But we consign ourselves to stagnation. And then we punish ourselves for being stagnant. Does all that make sense to you? Why would we bother that entire process? Why not stop that entire process and start acting differently? It's what we need to do, isn't it? If we go, Nora, thanks, up to...
Last night I felt very weak, like I was really weak to be able to actually connect with God and allow the process, the feeling of weakness, But at the same time, that feeling allowed me to see that I was actually connected at the same time.
So weak is the opposite of power, isn't it? So let's say I feel powerless. But what are you feeling powerless about, Nora?
I can't remember what it was at the time. I was just remembering, just concentrating to what you were saying, and one of the feelings was not powerless, but I said weak.
Yep, weak.
Weak.
Yep. I suggest to everyone who feels powerless or weak or controlled or whatever, any of those emotions related to that, that actually all of those emotions are what I would call Furphy emotions or emotions of self-deception. And underneath them is the real emotion. And the real emotion usually, if we're talking about powerlessness or weakness, the real emotion is how much we were controlled through our entire life. And we don't want to feel the pain of that. So what we do when we don't want to feel the pain of one emotion, we create another one so we don't have to feel the real emotion. Many of you are doing this, and this is something I'd like to talk about in humility. Many of you are doing this, creating an alternative emotion and being totally absorbed in that alternative emotion rather than feeling the actual one. So for yourself, Nora, your mother controlled you all of your life. This is why you feel powerless and weak. What you do is instead of allowing yourself to feel mummy's control of you and how unpleasant it felt, you would prefer to feel powerless and weak instead, rather than feel the pain of being controlled by another person all your life. And this is what we do with many emotions. We substitute more acceptable emotions so that we do not have to feel the real pain and hurt underneath. Now later I want to talk more about that subject because I'll list some emotions that we're doing that with. And one of them is this emotion of feeling powerless or weak. Another one is feeling unheard, feeling unwanted. They're all emotions often that have very strong feelings underneath them that we need to allow ourselves to see. If we go across to Tim, then across to Joy.
Thanks, Andrew. One that came up for me is witnessing someone being in trouble for doing something and the parent being angry at them about it, demanding the truth, so they're already receiving anger, and then they say that they won't be punished if they just tell the truth, nothing will happen, and then they tell the truth, and then the truth just confronts them so much that they get angry and smack them.
Yep. So in other words, we've been lied to so much about the allowance of truth in our lives. In our entire lives, we often get punished for the truth. When we tell a lie, then we get away with it. You notice that? Particularly we learn this as a child. You know, the parent comes up, did you do that? Did you do that? And already you can feel the violence in the question, right? And so you're already shaking your boots. No seems to be the right answer at the time, right? Even though, yes, I did do it, no feels to be right. Because you're so worried about the potential violence associated with either telling or receiving truth. So this is another reason why we resisted truth, is because in the past, the truth was often so associated with violence. Does that make sense? Now, Joy was next, and then Mary down the front here.
Yeah, similar to Tim, I know I had a fear of getting into trouble because I've done something wrong. And I also had a fear that because I'd get ridiculed if I did something right.
Yep.
So either way.
Ridiculed if you do something right because it wasn't right enough? Is that, or just because...
I've had lots of situations in my life where I've done something outstanding in my passions and desires and been ridiculed.
And ridiculed for the passion or desire.
Yeah.
Ridiculed for the emotion associated with what you did. Yep. Mary?
I feel like there's two reasons why I resist God's truth. One is because of this issue with humility that I have, as a feeling that all love will be withdrawn from me if I feel my true feelings. And so when truth comes to me, it triggers my feelings, and because I feel like I can't, I'm afraid of the punishment of feeling, I resist the truth. And that's also... prevents truth entering me emotionally. But the second thing is that in my family, there's almost prejudice against truth.
Yep.
There is no one truth. There are many sides to stories. And if you know a truth, you are arrogant and you're dogmatic.
So let's call that a confusion with truth.
There's actually a huge grief in me that I feel like truth has been a dirty word all my life, and I've felt so lost around truth that now there's all these blocks to just allowing myself to receive truth. Yeah.
So when a person states, for example, what Mary's saying, when a person states in her family that this is the truth, the family says, no, that's not possible, because everyone has their own truth. There's truth in everything, and there's
two sides to
there's
every
two sides
story.
to every story. And I put to you that there's not two sides to every story, actually. There's actually three sides to every story, but anyway, that's a different discussion. And this is all surrounding issues of truth, right? So we have all this fear and confusion associated with truth. Confusion in the sense that emotionally I'm not allowed to even consider that something could be the absolute truth because of the family environment or the different other emotions that I've grown up with. Because that is immediately condemned as a concept. Does that make sense? Yeah. And for many of us, that has been the case. By the way, the three sides of truth are God's, mine, and His. It's interesting you said His. Oh, theirs. Fair enough. God's, mine, and theirs. And mine can be God's, can't it? Or yours could be God's. We have the ability for one of us to be in harmony or in line with God's truth. So then there'd be two sides to truth. Truth and the error. And but unfortunately for many of us, both of what is presented is often in error, and God's truth is often somewhere else, indetermined by both individuals, unable to be accepted by both individuals.